He had a basement full, and we got this building finished, well, he hung them up in display cases and stored them in boxes, and he just everywhere. He decided he's going to have an auction and get rid of some of them. Well, we talked about having an auction here in this building, and I told him, I said, that's what you need to do. I said, I'll help you, and I'll put some stuff in it, and we'll have an auction. And we talked about having it maybe the day before Weaver's auction up in Amish country, somewhere where there would be a drawing of people other than just our auction. And well, that kind of died down, and we quit talking about it for a while. And he come in one day, and he was all excited, and he said, I've got it. He said, I know what we're going to do. He said, we're going to go to Sheridan during the Rocky Mountain Boot and Saddle Makers Roundup, or whatever they call it, and said the day before that, we're going to have an auction there. I said, okay. He said, if nothing else, we'll get our trip paid for. We'll get to go to Sheridan anyway. So we got to talking about that, and one thing led to another, and he got more enthused about it, and got Debbie enthused about it. Debbie is Doug's wife. And so that's what we decided to do. Well, really, they decided to do, and I went along with them. And so we started to work. They started to work, and I started helping them. And we tagged everything. I mean, thousands of tools. Doug has got a little, probably about an 18-foot box truck. Probably the bed on it, probably 18, 20 foot, and it's got the overhead door in the back, and it's dry, dried in, and got a lift gate on it, so that made it easy for us. And we filled that truck. I mean, we put our luggage right in the back, and we had to push on it to get it to stay in there while we closed the door. Of course, it wasn't all the way to the ceiling. There wasn't enough stuff that we could stack that high, but it was over halfway in the truck, the height of the truck. So he said, well, we're going to take the van. They had a minivan. Said, we're going to take the van, and we're going to get somebody else to help us drive. Says, we'll swap out on the van and the truck. We had somebody lined up, and something happened that they couldn't make it. This is about maybe a month before we were to leave, and something come up that person couldn't go. So Doug and I have got a friend up south of us here, and named Howard Wax. So we called him and told him, said, we want you to go to Sheridan with us. Oh, I can't go to Sheridan. And we said, well, what if we furnish your transportation? Well, I might could. And Doug said, well, what if we furnish you your meals? Well, that sounds better. He said, well, what if we furnish your room out there too? He said, well, you talked me into it. And Doug told him, said, well, there's only one hitch. What's that? He said, you got to drive a truck out there. And Howard is retired, and he said, well, that sounds all right with me. So we started out, Doug and Howard and I, swapping out, rotating on the van and in the truck. And Debbie would drive the van every once in a while. So we just was swapping out. Nobody was getting hurt, driving. And two of us was resting and two of us driving. And so it took us 2.5 days to drive out there. It was 1,500 miles. And we did all right. We didn't do any night driving. We drove during the day all the time. Saw a lot of pretty country. And we got into Sheridan about 3 o'clock the third day. And Doug had reserved the fairground, the exhibit building in the fairgrounds, and that's where we were going to hold the auction. So we got there, and we allowed ourselves an extra day just in case. But on the way up there, Doug got sick. I don't know, about the middle of the second day, he started feeling bad. And he got sick. He passed out once behind the wheel, but he was going fairly slow, or slow enough that he had a chance to get off and pull over. And I was following him, and I pulled in behind him and got out. And when I walked up to the door, he was just raising his head off the steering wheel. And I didn't know anything about him passing out, but I found out later that he had passed out. He had just got it over and fell over on the steering wheel, passed out. And so Debbie, they got off the interstate. They said, y'all go ahead, said, we'll catch him. And they got off the interstate and got where he could get out, get in some cool. It was a little warm. And so, a couple of hours, we didn't drive, but Howard and I was driving in the truck, and we didn't drive very fast, and about an hour and a half, well, they caught us. And Doug was sitting up in the seat smiling, so we figured, well, he's doing okay. And we went on and to where we was going to spend the night that night, and we checked in and went out and ate and got back, and we were pretty pooped, and we went to bed. About 5 o'clock, I woke up and went outside to the truck for something, and Debbie come out of their room. And she said, Doug is sick, and said, I'm gonna take him to the hospital. Well, not knowing, what to expect or anything, well, she gave me the keys. Well, we already had the keys, but she gave me all the paperwork, everything we had to have to hold the auction. And it said, y'all go on, says, if we don't get there, we'll sell everything and come home. So we left, and Howard and I went on and took the truck and took him to the hospital and gave him some medication, and they come on. And we were about 30-40 minutes out of Sheridan when they caught us. And we went on in and had the auction, had a good time. I had a little bit of stuff in the auction, and I thought I did real good on it. Doug ended up doing pretty good. He felt like he did good, so that's what mattered. But we had really had a good time, good trip. Of course, we got to go to the trade show, and we enjoyed that. I always enjoy going up there and seeing everybody, meeting new people, and I always meet somebody new that's from Texas every time I go. Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. Something was really interesting, I thought. There was a bootmaker, and I think I had met him somewhere before, but possibly when I was trading machinery. His name was really familiar, and he looked a little familiar, but anyway, he had a pair of boots, and they have a show in a show. In other words, several people will enter a saddle in the contest. There's a class for boots. There's a class for all kinds of leather work. And this man made a pair of boots, good looking pair of boots. I picked them up and turned them over, look at the sole, and he had tooled the sole on these boots. And I had never saw anybody try to tool on sole leather, but they was neat. It was different, and the judging was over, and he didn't win anything. And one of the judges come around and told him, he says, the reason you didn't win is because you would have got first place. But he says, your boots are not finished. And the guy looked at him and said, what do you mean they're not finished? And he said, well, handing him the boot and says, run your hand down in and feel of the sole. And there was a tack sticking up. He had failed not a tack, but a peg. And he had failed to get all of his pegs rubbed down with a rasp. And that's the only thing that kept him from winning the grand prize of the boot section. He was really disappointed. He could have kicked himself, I'm sure, halfway back to Texas. There was a group of people there. They were making rawhide lariat ropes. And in fact, the guy was teaching a class. And they had a finished lariat rope laying there in the room where they were working. And I was looking at it. Doug picked it up and was looking at it. And I think Howard picked it up and looked at it. We all handled it, and somebody asked, well, what's this rope worth? And they said, well, it's not for sale. And I think Doug asked and said, well, what would it be worth if it was for sale? And they told him, and it was in the hundreds of dollars. Howard asked them, well, why isn't it for sale? And they said, well, that goes to the president, to President Bush. And so they'd made it, and it was being presented to the president somewhere. I'm not sure at what event or anything. I think that same year, the Young Republicans of Texas had commissioned a saddle shop down in East Texas to build a saddle for the president. And I believe that this rope was to go with that saddle. I'm not sure about that, but it all looked about the same time frame. And it was a beautiful saddle. Woo! Had the president's emblem on it, and on the horn, and on each fender. In color, man, it was beautiful saddle. I didn't get to see it, in person, but I saw some pictures of it, and boy, it was nice looking saddle. Them guys, I think it's two brothers, and they do their own silver work. They do their saddles, and they did all the silver themselves, and it was a really beautiful bunch of work. Another thing at Sheridan, I believe the first year I went there, I got a chance to go to a seminar put on by Dusty Dusty Johnson. That don't sound right. Forget about that. I'll find out. One time, Doug and I and Scott Shipman was going to fly to Sheridan. And our flight went to Denver, and from Denver to Sheridan. Well, we had about 30-minute layover in Denver. And I'm sure if you've traveled Denver, you know what kind of mess Denver is, the airport. It is a huge thing. One concourse is a mile long. They got moving conveyors that you can stand on, and you don't have to walk. But anyway, we got to Denver. And we had about 30 minutes, between 20